out of your mind.
Get off the catnip, bro.
You're a psycho.
Mr. Tanner, you are suing Miss Perry for $1,200.
This particular day, the first dispute to be heard involves two neighbors, Bart Tanner and Lydia Perry. Bart Tanner is a passionate and slightly frazzled-looking man with a deep love for cats. He stands on the plaintiff's side of the courtroom, showing a bit of nervous energy. Across from him is Lydia Perry, who appears calm yet firm. She has come prepared to defend herself. Judge Lake glances between the two, reviewing the case, file in front of her before fixing her attention on Bart Tanner. Bart is asked to share why he is in court today. He begins to explain that he is suing Lydia for $1,200.
Bart Tanner claims his neighbor maliciously trapped his cats and took them to the pound.
He goes on to say that the cost represents his adoption and sterilization fees for several cats he claims Lydia maliciously trapped and took to the pound. He says his cats are part of his family, emphasizing that he is not just dealing with random animals, but cherished companions. He tells the judge he has had a tough time in life, mentioning how a broken leg left him feeling isolated until a girlfriend brought him his first cat for emotional support. That single cat changed his whole outlook on life. Bart's voice quivers slightly as he describes how grateful he was for that pet's comfort. When the judge asks how many cats he has, Bart admits that what started as one cat quickly grew into a houseful. He describes how his first cat, Rollo, was joined by a second cat, Joshua. Later, he says Rollo passed away around the same time his girlfriend left him, which pushed him to adopt more cats because, in his words, cats are my family. They keep me going. He never intended to have so many, but to him it just happened, and he never saw any harm in it. According to Bart, his neighbors should not mind, because he believes cats are independent creatures that should be allowed to roam free. Judge Lake turns her attention to Lydia Perry, wanting to understand her side of the story. Lydia says she moved into the neighborhood around 5 years ago. At first, she had no problem with Bart's pets. In fact, she says she likes animals and did not mind one or two cats lazing about on the sidewalk. However, after a while, she realized there weren't just one or two cats. She claims the number felt more like a dozen, perhaps even 15, and they seemed to be absolutely everywhere. She says they lounge on people's lawns, sun themselves on top of cars, and even act aggressive toward neighborhood children who are playing outside. Her main concern is her daughter, Lucy, who often likes to kick a soccer ball around in the front yard. Lydia insists that the kids are sometimes frightened by these cats dashing around them, making hissy sounds, or leaving messes in the yard. Bart, hearing this, shakes his head and calls Lydia's statements an exaggeration. He claims his cats are well behaved and do not pose any danger. He says the cats might wander here and there, but only as normal cats would. He points out that, in his view, Lydia wants to run the entire neighborhood and has decided his cats are a nuisance. He believes she is overreacting and has taken a drastic approach by trapping the cats and bringing them to the pound. He insists that because Lydia set traps with catnip or food, the cats were lured in, locked in a carrier, and brought to the animal shelter against his will. Lydia, hearing Bart's description, does not try to deny that she captured some of his animals. She calmly looks at the judge and says she did exactly that because she had no other choice. She further explains that at one point, animal control came to her neighborhood to assess the situation, but the cats remained. She claims Bart refused to keep them indoors despite her repeated requests. She also says the cats were not receiving proper veterinary care, making them, in her words, feral beasts roaming the streets. Lydia felt she had to act to protect her family, her property, and the area. She emphasizes she did what she did out of concern for everyone involved, including the animals. Judge Lake asks Bart to clarify why he wants $1,200 specifically. Bart explains that the shelter charged him an adoption fee to reclaim his own cats. He had to sign paperwork and pay a fee for each cat. He also had to cover sterilization costs because the shelter insisted on spaying or neutering the animals before releasing them back to him. He says that Lydia is the direct cause of these costs, and it is unfair that he had to spend so much money to get his pets out of the pound. He tells the court that one cat in particular, Miles, was traumatized by the experience. Bart describes how Miles was once a playful, outgoing cat, but came home from the shelter terrified, skittish, and afraid of every little noise. He lays blame on Lydia for destroying the cat's joyful spirit. At that point, Bart offers a few forms of evidence. He gives the judge receipts showing the adoption fees and the spay or neuter charges from the shelter. He also has a brief video clip. In the first part, the court sees Miles happily pouncing on a toy in Bart's living room. In the second part, Miles is slinking around nervously, flinching at sudden movements. Bart says that, in his opinion, Lydia's actions caused this drastic change in Miles's personality. Lydia, not appearing remorseful, repeats that Bart's cats were filthy, unvaccinated, and roaming where they should not be. She also says she has a child to consider. She does not feel safe knowing a pack of cats might jump out at any moment. She also hands over a couple of photographs showing at least 2 cats on top of a car, and another near the side of her house. She admits she was not able to get pictures of all the cats she counted because she was not willing to chase around a gang of them just for proof. She claims the pictures at least show the cats on her property, proving they did not remain in Bart's yard as he claims they did. Bart becomes agitated. He points out that only 2 cats are in those photos. Minanit insists that Lydia cannot show any proof of the so-called dozen or 15 cats she describes. The judge remains calm and reminds both parties not to interrupt each other and that this is a courtroom, not a place for shouting. She tells Lydia to continue explaining her reasoning for bringing the cats to the pound. Lydia simply states again that it was a matter of personal and neighborhood safety. The judge turns her attention back to Bart. She asks whether he believes it is acceptable to let his pets roam the entire neighborhood. Bart seems surprised by the question. He says that cats are naturally inclined to roam, and he does not believe in confining them within 4 walls. He also has a cat door installed so they can come and go freely. He insists that his cats were happier that way, and does not understand why others find it so upsetting. To him, a cat should be able to explore, chase birds, and lounge wherever it pleases. Judge Lake then brings up the fact that people do not appreciate having someone else's pets on their property. She notes that Lydia might be within her rights to protect her yard from constant defecation or from cats jumping onto her car. She asks Bart if he took any steps to control the cats once Lydia complained. Bart shrugs, stating he did nothing because he felt Lydia was overreacting and that her problem with the cats was exaggerated. He also says she never gave him time to figure out a solution before she went around capturing them. Lydia shakes her head at this and says she tried multiple times to speak with Bart directly, but he refused to listen. Bart goes on to say that because of Lydia's actions, he was forced not only to pay the fees, but to see his beloved pets go through a traumatic experience. The mention of traumatized pets seems to hit him hard. He holds up another receipt, emphasizing the total amount he paid. He claims that if Lydia had come to him calmly and suggested a more reasonable approach, they could have worked something out. Instead, she chose to lure and trap them, which he claims is cruel. Lydia counters that she did speak to him calmly at first, but his dismissive attitude forced her into drastic measures. The judge shows interest in the role of the animal shelter. She asks if they require spaying and neutering as a mandatory policy. Bart nods, looking frustrated. He reiterates that it was not his choice to get them fixed. He had not planned on it, believing the cats should remain as nature intended. He says it is unfair that his cats had to go through a medical procedure he never agreed to, and it cost him more money than he could easily afford. Lydia, unfazed, says that spaying and neutering is standard for controlling a large cat population. At this point, Judge Lake takes a moment to summarize. She notes that Bart seems to feel personally attacked and that he loves his cats deeply. She also notes that Lydia was within her rights to keep her property free from roaming animals. Judge Lake speaks about how the law often requires pet owners to be responsible for keeping their animals under control. If Bart wants to allow his cats outside, he must accept the risk that neighbors who feel threatened may take action within the boundaries of the law. She points out that Lydia did not secretly kill the cats or abandon them in the wild. She took them to a recognized pound. It might seem extreme, but it was not illegal for her to do so. Bart, appearing flustered, urges the judge to consider the emotional damage as well. He mentions Miles again, describing how the cat no longer responds to toys with the same enthusiasm. He says that at night, Miles even hides under the couch instead of sleeping on his usual perch. Lydia seems unmoved, insisting the cat was probably never properly socialized in the first place. She says that, while she understands Bart's affection, it does not change the fact that the cats were invading her private space and scaring neighborhood children. Judge Lake eventually calls for calm. She instructs Bart to hand over anything else he might have that proves wrongdoing on Lydia's part. He admits he does not have any videos showing Lydia actively placing traps and carrying the cats away, only the door camera footage that captured cat carriers in front of his home. He says it was clear that his neighbor was involved, but he cannot show a crystal clear image of Lydia's face. Lydia responds that she made no secret of her intentions, and that Bart knows full well she was the one who caught the cats. She explains that the reason she used carriers and bait is because she was trying to be as humane as possible, rather than chasing the cats down with a net or something more forceful. The bailiff stands quietly, waiting for the judge's final assessment. Judge Lake then takes a deep breath and announces her perspective. She sees that while Bart wants compensation for the fees he had to pay, he did not do enough to restrict the cat's movements. She indicates that people do have the right to enjoy their own property without intrusion. From Lydia's vantage point, the cats became an ongoing nuisance, and she felt Bart ignored her concerns. Judge Lake also reminds Bart that if you do not want neighbors interfering with your pets, you must keep them from running wild. Even though Bart finds Lydia's actions extreme, there is a reason the law allows property owners to protect themselves from unwanted animals, especially if there are health or safety concerns. When it is time to deliver the verdict, Judge Lake tells Bart that she is ruling in favor of Lydia Perry. She states that Bart's claim for $1,200 is denied. Bart looks devastated. He shakes his head in disbelief, muttering about how unfair it is that Lydia can simply lure and trap his pets. The judge reiterates that she understands his emotions, but says that the evidence and the law point toward Lydia's side. She wraps up the case by telling Bart he must take better precautions if he wishes to keep his cats out of trouble. She also thanks Lydia for trying to work within legal means. Even though her approach may seem harsh to a passionate cat owner, Bart and Lydia gather their things. The bailiff announces that court is adjourned. Bart leaves with a look of utter frustration, still talking about how he only wanted to give his pets the freedom they deserve. Lydia, for her part, appears relieved. She continues to maintain that it was never about hurting the cats, only about securing the safety and peace of the neighborhood. In the hallway, bystanders watch them walk away in opposite directions. The tension is still thick, but the legal matter is settled. When the cameras stop rolling and the echoes fade from the courtroom, the message left behind is that caring about animals does not excuse letting them roam onto other people's property. Lydia's methods might appear drastic, but the judge decided they were within her rights. Bart, though well-intentioned, learned a difficult lesson that day about the responsibility that comes with pet ownership. That concludes the story of how one cat lover's devotion clashed with a neighbor's determination to maintain her yard and the safety of her family. This ends the first script about the cat dispute, capturing the frustration of two neighbors who simply could not agree on how to handle a growing cat population. It is a reminder to every pet owner that loving your animals is wonderful, but respect for others' property and well-being matters just as much. Even when emotions run high, the law focuses on fairness. Judge Lake held firm on that principle, leaving Bart Tanner to realize that if he wants to avoid these issues in the future, he has to accept that freedom for his cats comes with legal responsibilities he can never ignore.